The clinking of silverware and the low hum of passengers settling in filled the cabin as Flight 782 soared above the clouds en route from Seattle to New York. First class was serene, crisp white linens, murmured conversations, the occasional chime from the flight attendant's call buttons. But in the first row, near the window, sat a little girl whose big brown eyes quietly scanned the aisle. Her curls were neatly tied into twin puffs, and her hands lay politely folded in her lap. Her name was Sophie. She was 6 years old, and she was flying alone, or at least it felt that way. Technically, her father was on board, 2 rows behind her, deeply absorbed in a business call through his earpiece. Everett Langston, CEO of Langston Innovations and one of the youngest billionaires in America, was never fully present, not even when he was physically in the same room. Meetings, mergers, international expansions, he always had somewhere more important to be. Sophie's stomach growled softly. The in-flight meal sat untouched before her. She looked at it like it was a test she didn't know how to solve. She picked at the plastic wrap, then sighed and looked out the window. Her eyes welled up slightly, not from hunger, but from loneliness. That's when she noticed. Claire Reynolds had been a flight attendant for 7 years. She had dealt with angry travelers, lost luggage, screaming babies, and medical emergencies at 30,000 feet. But something about this little girl tugged at a part of her that had grown quiet over the years. Claire crouched beside her, smiling warmly. "Not hungry?" she asked gently. Sophie blinked and shook her head. "It's not that. I just don't know what's in it. Daddy always reads the labels for me. I have allergies." Claire's heart twisted. She glanced toward the man 2 rows back, still furiously typing on a tablet. "Does your daddy know you haven't eaten?" Sophie shrugged. "He's busy." Claire didn't need more explanation. 15 minutes later, Claire reappeared with something not on the first-class menu. A small paper bag with apple slices, a peanut-free sandwich she prepared herself in the galley, and a tiny chocolate chip cookie wrapped with care. Sophie's eyes lit up. "For me," she whispered. Claire nodded. "Everything's safe. I made sure." Sophie took a bite and chewed happily. For the first time during the flight, she smiled wide. And that's when Everett looked up. From where he sat, he could only see the back of Claire's figure kneeling beside his daughter, offering her food. His first instinct? Alarm. Security breach. Stranger danger. He stood, swiftly but silently, walking up the aisle. But when he reached them, something strange happened. He stopped. Frozen in place, Everett watched, really watched, as Sophie giggled while Claire gently wiped a smudge of cookie from her cheek. There was laughter, eye contact, warmth, all things Everett didn't even realize he hadn't seen from his daughter in months. He said nothing and returned to his seat, quietly shaken. Later that evening, while passengers slept and the plane dimmed for night, Claire passed through first class again. She paused near Sophie's seat and found the girl curled up in her blanket, peacefully asleep, with the cookie bag clutched in one small hand. But Everett was awake. He stood in the galley, waiting. "Miss," he hesitated, then realized he didn't know her name. "Claire," she offered, startled. He gave a nod. "That was kind of you." "The food." Claire smiled politely. "Just doing my job." "No," Everett replied slowly. "You did more than that." There was silence. For a moment, they were no longer a flight attendant and a billionaire. They were just 2 strangers with an invisible thread connecting them, one deeply overworked and distant, the other someone who still remembered how to see people. Then Everett said the words he hadn't spoken to anyone in months. "I don't think I know my daughter anymore." Claire didn't respond right away. She looked down the aisle, toward the sleeping little girl, then back at him. "It's never too late," she said softly. And something shifted in Everett's chest. A seed was planted that night, though he didn't know it yet. The weeks after the flight blurred into a whirlwind of deadlines and decisions. But Everett couldn't forget her, either of them. Claire, the woman who had noticed what he had missed. Sophie, the daughter who had quietly stopped waiting for him to notice. One evening, as Everett walked past his daughter's bedroom, he paused. The door was half open. She sat on the floor with her teddy bear, having a pretend tea party. Alone. Again. He leaned against the door frame. "Can I join?" Sophie looked up, surprised. You never play tea party. I know, he said quietly. But I'd like to start. And so he did. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Everett adjusted his schedule, just a little at first. One fewer meeting. One earlier dinner. A bedtime story instead of a boardroom call. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Someone. He found her email through the airline's customer feedback portal. Subject: Thank you. Message: I owe you more than thanks. You reminded me who I'm supposed to be for my daughter. I was wondering, would you like to meet us for coffee sometime? As a friend. No pressure. Claire read it twice before replying. Their first meeting was simple. A park bench. Sophie ran around chasing bubbles, while Claire and Everett sat side by side, the awkwardness quickly fading. Over time, coffee turned to lunch. Lunch turned into family outings. Then one snowy night, Claire joined them for Christmas dinner, just the three of them, laughter echoing through the once silent Langston mansion. For the first time in years, Everett didn't feel hollow. He felt whole. But love, real love, doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives softly in shared glances, in bedtime stories read together, in school recitals where they sat side by side, clapping the loudest for Sophie. Claire became more than a flight attendant. She became the heartbeat in their home. And Sophie? She never went hungry again, not for food, not for attention, not for love. One day, as Everett tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes and asked, Daddy, do you think Miss Claire could stay forever? He kissed her forehead. I think that's the best idea you've ever had. A year later, on the same flight route, Seattle to New York, Claire wore a white dress instead of a uniform. Sophie scattered petals down the aisle of the small private jet, which had been transformed for the ceremony. And at 30,000 feet, where this story first began, Claire Reynolds became Claire Langston. She had fed a little girl on a plane once. What she didn't know was that she had also healed a broken man's soul. And in doing so, she'd found a love that flew higher than any jet. Sometimes, the smallest gestures, like sharing a meal, can lead to the biggest changes. Kindness is never just kindness. It's the seed of transformation. And when you lead with heart, you might just become someone's miracle.